Captain Do-hyun Kim stared at the strange signals coming through his ship's communication system. He had been patrolling the outer edge of human space for 3 months, checking for pirates or lost cargo ships. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. Until now. The signals were not from any human technology. They came in patterns that seemed almost like music, with colors that danced across his screens. Do-hyun had never seen anything like this before. His heart started beating faster. "Doctor." "Park," he called to his science officer. "Come look at this." Dr. Yoonji Park floated over in the low gravity of the command deck. She was small and thin, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. As the ship's expert on alien life, she had been hoping for this moment her whole career. "These signals are not natural," she said after studying the patterns. "Someone is trying to talk to us." Lieutenant Soo-bin Lee, the ship's tactical officer, checked her weapon systems. "Could be a trap, Captain. We should be ready for anything." Do-hyun nodded. Soo-bin was always careful, always thinking about danger. That was why she was still alive after 5 years of military service. But this felt different. The signals seemed almost polite, like someone knocking on a door instead of trying to break it down. Engineer Taiwan Choi looked up from his workstation. "The signals are using our own communication frequencies. Whoever sent this studied our technology first. They know how to talk to us." Medic Hyejin Nam, who had been reading in the corner, put down her book. "If they wanted to hurt us, would they announce themselves first?" Do-hyun considered this. In all the stories about first contact with aliens, humans had always imagined many different scenarios, but they had never actually happened before. Humans had been alone in the galaxy for as long as anyone could remember. "Dr. Park, can you understand what they are saying?" Do-hyun asked. Yoonji worked at her computer for several hours. The rest of the crew waited, watching the strange signals continue to arrive. The patterns were complex but seemed to repeat certain parts, like a language but unlike any language humans had ever heard. "I think I have something," Yoonji said finally. "This part here keeps repeating. It might mean greeting or hello, and this other pattern might be a number system." She worked through the night, drinking coffee and making notes. Do-hyun ordered the other crew members to get some rest, but none of them could sleep. They were about to make history. When morning came, Yoonji had made a breakthrough. "Captain, I can read some of this message," she said, her voice excited but tired. "They call themselves the Galactic Collective. They represent hundreds of different alien species." Do-hyun felt his stomach drop. Hundreds of species? Humans had thought they might find 1 or 2 other intelligent races in the galaxy. But hundreds? "What do they want?" Soo-bin asked, her hand still near her weapon controls. "They want to invite us to join them," Yoonji said. "But there is something strange about how they talk about us. They keep using a word that I think means dangerous or deadly." Taiwan frowned. "Why would they invite us if they think we are dangerous?" "Maybe they need dangerous," Hyejin said quietly. "Maybe they have problems that safe species cannot solve." Yoonji continued reading the message. Her face grew more serious as she translated. "They classify planets by how difficult they are to live on," she explained. "Most species come from what they call garden worlds, planets with perfect weather, no predators, no natural disasters. These aliens evolved in safe, peaceful places." "What about Earth?" Do-hyun asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. "Earth is classified as a Category 9 death world," Yoonji said. "The most dangerous classification they have. They say, planets like Earth create species that are incredibly tough and aggressive. They call us Deathworlders." The crew was quiet for a moment. They had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. Yes, there were storms and earthquakes and wild animals. But that was just normal life. "There is more," Yoonji continued. "They want us to prove that we can contribute to galactic peace, not just warfare. It seems like they think all we know how to do is fight." Soo-bin laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "They are probably right. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We also build things, heal people, create art, explore space," Hyejin pointed out. "We are more than just warriors." Do-hyun studied the message again. Something about it bothered him. Dr. Park, are there any other parts to this transmission? Yoonji checked her systems. Yes, there are some encrypted sections that I cannot read yet. Subin, can your military equipment break those codes? Subin worked on the encrypted data for an hour. What she found made her face go pale. Captain, these aliens are scared, she said. Really scared. There are military frequencies hidden in this message. They are asking for help, but they do not want to admit it publicly. Help with what? I am not sure yet. But there are references to lost star systems, refugee populations, and something they call the devouring. Whatever that means, it has them terrified. Do-hyun looked at his crew. They were good people, all of them. Smart, brave, and loyal. But they were just 5 humans on a small ship, far from home. Could they really help an entire galaxy? What do you all think? He asked. Should we accept their invitation? It could be dangerous, Subin said. Subin, we would be completely outnumbered and far from any help. It could also be the greatest discovery in human history, Yoonji said. Think of what we could learn. They need medical help, Hye-jin added. The message mentions refugee populations. People are suffering. Their technology is clearly more advanced than ours, Taewon said. But if they need our help, maybe our different way of thinking is valuable. Do-hyun made his decision. Send a reply, Dr. Park. Tell them we accept their invitation. As Yoonji prepared the response message, Do-hyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, hundreds of alien species were waiting to meet the humans from the deadly planet Earth. They expected warriors and fighters. They would get that, but they would also get healers, builders, explorers, and dreamers. The message was sent, traveling faster than light toward the center of the galaxy. Within days, they received coordinates and travel instructions. The Galactic Collective wanted to meet them at a massive space station called Nexus. Crew, prepare for departure, Do-hyun announced. We are about to represent all of humanity to the galaxy. Let us make sure we do it right. As their ship turned toward the galactic center, none of them knew what they would find there. They did not know about the ancient threat that was consuming entire star systems. They did not know about the peaceful aliens who had never learned to fight. They did not know that the galaxy's salvation would require the very qualities that made humans dangerous. All they knew was that somewhere among the stars, people needed help. And helping people was something humans had always been good at, even when it meant putting themselves in danger. The journey to Nexus Station would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for the most important meeting in human history. Do-hyun hoped it would be enough time. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around the sun, unaware that its children were about to change the fate of the galaxy. Ahead of them, the stars waited with secrets that would test everything humanity thought they knew about survival, sacrifice, and what it meant to be civilized. The Deathworlders were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Nexus Station was the largest structure Do-hyun had ever seen. It orbited a neutron star, using the incredible gravity to power itself. The station was bigger than some moons, with thousands of docking bays and millions of inhabitants from hundreds of different worlds. Look at the size of that thing, Taewon whispered as their small ship approached. How did they even build something so massive? Very carefully and probably over many centuries, Yoonji replied, studying the readings on her instruments. The engineering is incredible, but also strange. Everything seems designed for beauty rather than efficiency. Subin checked their weapons one more time, even though Do-hyun had ordered them powered down as a sign of peaceful intentions. I count at least 50 different ship designs in the docking area. We are definitely not in Kansas anymore. Their ship was guided to a special docking bay marked with symbols that Yoonji translated as Dangerous Species Containment. The name did not make them feel particularly welcome. Containment? Hye-jin asked. Are we prisoners or guests? Maybe, both, Do-hyun said grimly. When they stepped off their ship, they were met by a security team of 6 different alien species. The aliens wore some kind of protective suits and kept their distance. One of them, who looked like a walking crystal formation, approached cautiously. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Ethereal Collective, the crystal being said, its words coming through a translation device. Welcome to Nexus Station. Please understand that certain precautions are necessary when dealing with Category 9 Deathworlders. Do-hyun tried to stay polite, even though being treated like a dangerous animal was insulting. We appreciate your invitation, Ambassador. We come in peace and hope to learn from your civilization. Veltar's crystal body flashed different colors, which Yoonji's translator said meant confusion and concern. You speak of peace, but your species evolved on a world where survival required constant violence. How can we trust that you will not revert to your natural aggressive behavior? Because we choose not to, Do-hyun replied simply. Humans are capable of both violence and peace. We use violence only when necessary to protect others. This seemed to confuse Veltar even more. The other aliens in the security team whispered among themselves in languages the translator could not handle. They were escorted through the station's corridors, and the humans quickly realized how different they were from everyone else. The other aliens moved slowly and gracefully, like they had never been in a hurry for anything. The corridors were wide and open, with no defensive positions or emergency shelters. Everything was decorated with beautiful art, but Do-hyun noticed there were no maps or emergency exit signs. These people have never had to worry about danger, Soo-bin muttered quietly. This whole station is built like a museum, not a fortress. They were given quarters in the dangerous species wing, which was separated from the main population by multiple security barriers. Their rooms were comfortable but clearly designed like prison cells, with no sharp objects and furniture that could not be used as weapons. This is ridiculous, Taewon complained as he examined their quarters. They have given us plastic spoons and plates that dissolve if you touch them too hard. Do they think we are going to eat our way out of here? The next day, Ambassador Veltar gave them a tour of the station. Do-hyun was amazed by the technology but also frustrated by how inefficient it was. Everything was designed to look beautiful or be perfectly safe, with no consideration for emergencies or resource limitations. This power distribution system is completely exposed, Taewon observed as they walked through an engineering section. One small accident could shut down power to half the station. Accidents are very rare, Veltar replied. Most species learned to control their environment completely before they developed space travel. We have not had a serious technical failure in over 400 years. What happens if you do have one? Hye-jin asked. We request assistance from our engineering specialists, who design a committee to study the problem and propose solutions. How long does that take? Usually several months to a few years, depending on the complexity of the issue. The humans exchanged glances. On Earth, if something broke, you fixed it immediately, or people died. The idea of taking years to solve a technical problem was completely foreign to them. That evening, they were invited to a diplomatic dinner with representatives from 12 different species. The meal was served in a beautiful dining hall with crystal chandeliers and floating tables that adjusted to each species' preferred height and atmosphere. Do-hyun quickly discovered that most of the food served was what other species considered emergency rations, high-energy survival food for extreme circumstances. For the aliens, it was barely edible. For humans who were used to eating almost anything, it tasted fine. You actually enjoy this food? Asked General Mordak, an insectoid being who represented the most militaristic species in the collective. Even he seemed shocked by human dietary preferences. It is not our favorite, but we can eat almost anything organic, Do-hyun explained. Humans evolved as omnivores on a world where food was often scarce. Fascinating and disturbing, Mordak replied. Your species can survive on substances that would poison most civilized beings. During the dinner, Hye-jin was asked to help when one of the alien representatives suffered a minor injury, a small cut on what might have been its arm or leg. The other aliens panicked as if it were a life-threatening emergency. Please remain calm, Hye-jin said as she examined the wound. This is very minor. I can fix it in 30 seconds. She cleaned the cut and applied a simple bandage. The injured alien stared at her in amazement. You have medical knowledge for treating physical trauma? It asked. How did you learn such specialized skills? All humans learn basic first aid, Hyojin explained. Physical injuries happen frequently on our world. How frequently? Ambassador Veltar asked with obvious concern. Most humans get minor cuts and bruises several times per year. More serious injuries happen to maybe 1 in 10,000 people annually. The aliens were horrified. In their civilizations, physical injury was so rare that most people never learned how to treat it. They had machines that could cure diseases and extend life, but they had never developed the kind of practical medical skills that humans took for granted. After dinner, Subin excused herself to use the facilities, but actually went exploring. The station's security was impressive against invasion from outside, but completely inadequate against someone who was already inside and knew how to move quietly. She discovered supply depots full of military equipment that had never been used. Weapons that were designed to look impressive rather than function effectively. Battle plans that assumed the enemy would politely announce their intentions and fight according to established rules. Most disturbing of all, she found refugee camps, hidden in the lower levels of the station. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species, all displaced from their home worlds. When she asked one of the refugees what had happened to their planet, the alien showed her pictures of empty space where a star system used to be. The Devourers came 3 months ago, the refugee explained. First our outer planets went silent, then our colonies, then our homeworld. Now there is nothing left but empty space. Subin returned to the others with this information. Do-hyun was not surprised. They brought us here because they are losing a war, he told his crew. They need soldiers, but they are too proud or too scared to admit it directly. So what do we do? Yoonji asked. We help them, Do-hyun replied. But first we need to understand what they are really fighting against. Over the next few days, the humans learned more about the collective situation. The organization was impressive. Hundreds of species working together, sharing technology and resources, maintaining peace across thousands of star systems. But they were also completely unprepared for existential threats. Their military doctrine was based on the assumption that conflicts could be resolved through negotiation and compromise. Their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. Their strategies focused on minimizing casualties rather than achieving victory. They fight wars the way we play games, Subin observed, with rules and referees and the assumption that everyone will behave fairly. What happens when the other side does not play by the rules? Taewon asked. They lose, Do-hyun said grimly, and from what I can see they have been losing for a long time. The humans began to understand why they had been invited. The collective needed people who could think like predators, who could make hard choices, who could fight to win rather than just to look civilized. They were about to learn just how desperate the situation really was. Scholar Firen was different from the other aliens Do-hyun had met. The plant-like being from the Verdani Republic seemed nervous, constantly looking around as if afraid of being watched. When Firen finally agreed to meet with the humans privately, Do-hyun knew they were about to learn something important. The collective has not been entirely honest with you, Firen said, the translator making the scholar's voice sound worried. The situation is much worse than they have admitted. They met in a small conference room in the station's academic sector. Firen had chosen this location because it was monitored less carefully than the diplomatic areas. How much worse? Yoonji asked. 300 years ago, something began consuming star systems from the outer edge of the galaxy, Firen explained. At first, we thought it was natural, maybe black holes or some kind of cosmic phenomenon. But the pattern was too organized, too systematic. Firen activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Thousands of star systems were marked in red, all gone, consumed, leaving nothing behind but empty space. We call them the Devourers, Firen continued. They appear without warning, and within days an entire solar system is reduced to nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, just empty space where billions of lives used to exist. Subin studied the holographic map. The pattern is not random. They are moving inward in a spiral, consuming systems with the most advanced civilizations. First, yes, Firen said, surprised that Subin had seen the pattern so quickly. Our military analysts took decades to figure that out. What have you tried to stop them? Do-hyun asked. Everything we could think of. Diplomatic missions to try to communicate with them, military fleets to engage them in honorable combat, evacuation efforts to save civilian populations. Nothing works. Heejin looked at the refugee numbers displayed on the hologram. How many people have been displaced? Over 2 trillion beings have lost their homeworlds. The refugee camps are overflowing. Our resources are stretched to the breaking point. Taewon examined the technical data about the Devourers. These readings don't make sense. How can they completely consume all matter in a star system? That should be physically impossible. We don't understand their technology, Firen admitted. Our best scientists have studied the few pieces of evidence we have collected, but the Devourer machines operate on principles we cannot comprehend. What about your military? Subin asked. How have your fleets performed against them? Firen's plant-like features seemed to wilt with embarrassment. Not well. Our military doctrine assumes that enemies can be reasoned with, that conflicts have limited objectives, that there are rules of war that both sides will respect. The Devourers don't follow your rules. Do-hyun guessed. They don't follow any rules. They don't communicate, they don't take prisoners. They don't seem to want territory or resources in any way we understand. They just consume everything and move on to the next target. The next day, Captain Zix-Olan of the Aquatic Defense Force agreed to take the humans to see a recently attacked system. Zix-Olan was from a waterworld species and commanded one of the few refugee evacuation fleets that had survived direct contact with the Devourers. I want you to understand what we are dealing with, Zix-Olan said as their ship approached what used to be the Kethmiran system. This was the home of 12 billion people just 3 weeks ago. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the humans stared in shock at empty space. There was no star, no planets, no asteroids, no debris. Nothing at all where a solar system should have been. How is this possible? Taewon whispered. We don't know, Zix-Olan replied. The Devourers left nothing behind. Even the space dust is gone. Yoonji ran every scientific scan she could think of. The gravitational fields are all wrong. It's like the mass of the entire system was just deleted. Can we get closer? Subin asked. I want to look for any traces of the attackers. As they moved through the empty space, Subin's military sensors picked up faint energy signatures. Very faint, but definitely artificial. There, she said, pointing to a location that looked completely empty. Something was there recently. Something large. We see nothing on our instruments, Zix-Olan said. Your instruments are designed to look for natural phenomena or conventional technology, Subin explained. Military sensors are designed to find things that don't want to be found. She had Do-hyun adjust their course toward the energy signature. As they got closer, her equipment detected more traces. Captain, I think I know what happened here, Subin said, her voice grim. This wasn't a battle. It was a harvest. She showed the others her analysis. The energy patterns suggest that the Devourers didn't destroy this system. They converted it. All the matter, all the energy, everything was somehow transformed into something else, and then taken away. Taken where? Do-hyun asked. Unknown. But the process was incredibly efficient. There was no waste, no energy loss, no debris. Whatever these Devourers are, they have technology far beyond anything in the collective. Zix-Olan was quiet for a long time. Finally, the aquatic captain spoke. This is why we invited your species to join us. The peaceful methods that have served the collective for thousands of years are useless against this threat. You want us to fight for you, Do-hyun said. Yes. But more than that, we want you to teach us how to fight. How to think like predators instead of prey. How to make the hard choices that civilized species cannot make. On the journey back to Nexus Station, the humans discussed what they had learned. The situation was worse than they had imagined. The collective was facing an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be defeated by conventional means, and was systematically consuming the galaxy. The Devourers are not just random destroyers, Yunji observed. The pattern of their attacks suggests they are learning, adapting, becoming more efficient with each system they consume, which means they are intelligent, Taewon added. But intelligence without empathy, without any consideration for the lives they are ending. The refugees we saw, Heejin said quietly. Some of them have been displaced multiple times. The Ayad Devourers destroyed their first homeworld, then their colony world, then their refugee settlement. They are being systematically hunted. The collective's response has been completely inadequate, Subin said bluntly. They send diplomatic missions to enemies that don't communicate. They fight defensive battles against attackers that leave no survivors. They evacuate populations but have nowhere safe to put them. Do-hyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were consuming another system, ending billions of lives in their relentless advance toward the galaxy's core. What do you think? He asked his crew. Can we help them? We have to try, Heejin said. Those refugees, those billions of people who have lost everything, they need someone to stand up for them. The collective has superior technology and numbers, Taewon said, but they lack the tactical thinking and willingness to take risks that might actually stop this threat. Their biggest weakness is that they still think like prey animals, Subin added. They react to threats instead of anticipating them. They focus on minimizing losses instead of maximizing damage to the enemy. So we teach them to think like predators, Yunji said. We show them that sometimes you have to be willing to sacrifice the few to save the many. Do-hyun made his decision. When we get back to Nexus Station, I'm going to request a meeting with their military command. It's time to stop pretending this is a diplomatic problem. As their ship approached the massive station, none of them knew that they were about to change the course of galactic history. The peaceful collective was about to learn what it meant to fight like Deathworlders, and the galaxy would discover that sometimes salvation comes from the most dangerous places. The war against the Devourers was about to begin in earnest. General Mordak was not happy about giving command of a fleet to a species he barely trusted. The insectoid general paced back and forth in the briefing room, his multiple arms clicking together in frustration. The council has decided that you, humans, will be given a test, Mordak announced. You claim that your violent nature can be useful against the Devourers. We shall see. Do-hyun stood at attention, though he was not sure if alien military protocol required it. What kind of test, General? You will be given command of Fleet Designation Expendable 7, Mordak said, his translator not hiding the disdain in his voice. These are older ships crewed by species that the collective considers problematic. Subin raised an eyebrow. Problematic how? Too aggressive for proper civilized service. Species from worlds that are almost as dangerous as yours, though not quite Category 9 death worlds. Mordak activated a holographic display showing the fleet composition. 37 ships, crews from 15 different species, all with reputations for excessive violence or disregard for proper military procedure. Do-hyun studied the fleet data. The ships were indeed older, but they looked functional. More importantly, if the crews came from dangerous worlds, they might actually be capable of the kind of fighting this war required. What is our mission? Do-hyun asked. The Devourers are approaching the Kethran system. 12 billion civilians, major industrial complex, strategic importance to the collective's defense. Mordak's compound eyes focused on Do-hyun. Previous attempts to defend systems have resulted in total losses. All ships destroyed, all populations consumed. You will attempt to do better. What do you consider success? Subin asked. Any result other than complete annihilation would be an improvement over our previous performance. The next day, Do-hyun and his crew were transported to the fleet staging area. As they approached the command ship, Do-hyun was surprised to see that it looked more functional than beautiful, clearly built by a species that prioritized effectiveness over appearance. The crew of the command ship was waiting for them. Do-hyun had never seen such a diverse group of aliens. There was a reptilian species with natural armor plating, a group of crystalline beings that could apparently survive in hard vacuum, and several others that looked like they had evolved to be warriors. Captain Vextar of the Saurian Defense Corps stepped forward. Unlike the polished diplomats at Nexus Station, Vextar looked like someone who had actually seen combat. Scars covered the reptilian's armor plating, and one eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant. "So you are the famous Deathworlders," Vextar said, sizing up the human crew. "The collective thinks you can teach us how to fight. I am curious to see what Category 9 species can do." "We don't know if we can teach you anything," Do-hyun replied honestly, "but we can show you how humans approach this kind of problem." Over the next several hours, Do-hyun met with the fleet commanders. Each species had been relegated to this expendable fleet because they were considered too dangerous or unpredictable for regular collective forces. The Saurians came from a desert world with frequent resource wars. The crystalline entities had evolved in the vacuum of space around a dying star. The Ferris clans were from a high-gravity world where everything was built to be indestructible. "These are not soft, peaceful species," Subin observed privately to Do-hyun. "They have been treated like outcasts because they think more like humans, which means they might actually be capable of the kind of warfare we need," Do-hyun replied. The fleet moved toward the Kethran system, arriving 3 days before the Devourers were expected to attack. Do-hyun called a meeting of all ship commanders to discuss strategy. "Previous defensive efforts have focused on protecting the civilian population," Do-hyun began. "This is admirable, but it has not worked. The Devourers consume everything regardless of whether it is military or civilian." "So what do you propose?" asked Commander Zeklon of the Ferris clans. "We assume that we cannot save everyone," Do-hyun said bluntly. "Our primary goal is to save as many people as possible and learn as much as we can about Devourer capabilities." The alien commanders were shocked. In collective military doctrine, the primary goal was always to protect all civilians. "You are suggesting we sacrifice some people to save others?" Vextar asked. "I am suggesting we accept that some people will die no matter what we do," Do-hyun corrected. "The question is whether we save 0% or 60% of the population." Subin activated the tactical display. "Here's the plan. We divide the fleet into 3 groups. Group 1 begins immediate civilian evacuation of the outer planets. Group 2 prepares defensive positions around the main populated worlds. Group 3, the fastest ships, conducts hit-and-run attacks on the Devourers to slow their advance and gather intelligence." "You want to attack them directly?" Commander Moltek of the crystalline entities asked. "Previous direct attacks have resulted in complete annihilation of our forces." "Previous direct attacks were conducted by ships, designed for civilized warfare against civilized enemies," Taewon interjected. "Our ships are designed for survival in hostile environments. We might last long enough to learn something useful." The plan was controversial, but the fleet commanders agreed to try it. They had seen the results of conventional collective tactics. Complete failure was hard to improve upon. When the Devourers arrived, they came in a formation unlike anything the collective had faced before. Instead of a fleet of ships, they appeared to be a single massive structure that continuously changed shape and size. "It is like a living machine," Yoonji observed, as they watched the Devourer construct approach the outer planets of the Kethran system. "Beginning evacuation of outer colonies," reported Vextar from Group 1. "Civilian transports are moving faster than expected. These populations seem more willing to abandon their homes than previous evacuees." "They have seen what happened to other systems," Hyejin said grimly. "They know that staying means death." Group 3, led by Subin, began their attack runs on the Devourer construct. The results were both encouraging and terrifying. The human-designed tactics allowed them to survive initial contact, something no previous collective force had achieved. The 4 Devourers are not invincible, Subin reported over the communication system. "They can be damaged, but they adapt incredibly quickly to our attacks." "Adaptation how?" Do-hyun asked. "They learn from each engagement. Weapons that work the first time become less effective with each use. It is like they are updating their defenses in real time." Meanwhile, Hyejin had established field medical stations on the planets being evacuated. She quickly discovered that most collective medical personnel had no experience with mass casualty situations. "You have to choose who to treat first," she explained to a group of alien medics. Save the ones you can save quickly, then move on to the next patient. But what about the ones who need more extensive care? Asked one of the medics. If you spend 30 minutes saving one person, 5 others will die who could have been saved in 5 minutes each, Yejin replied. It is horrible mathematics, but it is the only way to save the maximum number of lives. As the battle continued, Taewon made a crucial discovery. The Devourer construct was not just consuming matter, it was converting it into more of itself, growing larger and more complex with each planet it absorbed. Captain, the Devourers are not just destroying these worlds, Taewon reported. They are using the matter to build more Devourer constructs. This is not conquest. It is reproduction. Can we stop the conversion process? Do-hyun asked. Unknown, but I have an idea. If we can disrupt their conversion at a crucial moment, we might be able to save part of a planet instead of losing it completely. The opportunity came when the Devourers began consuming the industrial world of Kethron 4. Taewon coordinated a precision strike at the moment when the conversion process was most vulnerable. The attack worked partially. Instead of consuming the entire planet, the Devourers only managed to convert about 40% of it before their process was disrupted. 60% of Kethron IV survived, Subin reported. That's approximately 7 billion people still alive. For the collective, saving only 60% of a population was considered a catastrophic failure. For humans, saving 7 billion lives was a victory. The evacuation fleets report successful withdrawal of 85% of the outer colonies, Vexistar added. Total saved population approximately 10 billion people. General Mordak's response came through the communication system. Unacceptable losses. This operation is a failure by all collective standards. By collective standards, yes, Do-hyun replied. But by survival standards, we saved 10 billion people who would have died under previous tactics. Sometimes you have to choose between bad and worse. The alien commanders in Do-hyun's fleet were beginning to understand. Commander Zeklon summed it up. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone fought the Devourers and lived to tell about it. For the first time, civilians were successfully evacuated from a system under attack. As they regrouped and prepared for the next battle, Do-hyun realized that they had achieved something more important than military victory. They had proven that the Devourers could be fought, that losses could be limited, that some people could be saved. It was not the clean, honorable victory that the collective preferred, but it was hope. And Hop, the captured Devourer fragment, floated in the center of Taiwan's engineering bay like a piece of living nightmare. It was about the size of a small shuttle, made of materials that seemed to shift between metal and something organic. Strange patterns of light pulsed through its surface, and it generated an energy field that made nearby instruments malfunction. Are you sure this thing is safe? Heejin asked, staying well back from the alien artifact. I'm not sure of anything about it, Taewon admitted. But it is our first chance to study Devourer technology up close. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Kethron. Do-hyun's expendable fleet had become something of a legend in the collective military. They were still considered failures by official standards, but they were failures who brought home survivors and intelligence data. The fragment had been recovered from the remains of Kethron 4 during the evacuation. Subin had noticed it behaving differently from the rest of the Devourer construct. Instead of consuming matter, it seemed to be analyzing it. I think this piece was some kind of scout or sensor unit, Taewon explained as he carefully probed the artifact with remote instruments. It was studying the planet's population and technology before the main construct arrived. Yoonji watched, the patterns of light moving through the fragment. Those look almost like neural patterns, like thoughts moving through a brain. That is exactly what I think they are, Taewon said excitedly. This is not just a machine, it is some kind of artificial intelligence. Over the next several days, Taewon worked with a team of alien specialists who had learned to think more like humans. They were all from species that had been assigned to the expendable fleets, beings who could handle dangerous ideas and risky procedures. Engineer Kolvex of the Ferris clans had experience with hostile artificial intelligences from his homeworld's industrial conflicts. Dr. Siltara was a crystalline being who specialized in energy-based life forms. Technician Vexmar was from a species that had actually fought a war against their own created machines centuries ago. The intelligence patterns are incredibly complex, Dr. Siltara reported, more sophisticated than anything in collective databases. But there is something strange about them. Strange how? Do-hyun asked. They are repetitive. The same patterns appear over and over, like thoughts stuck in a loop. It reminds me of damaged neural networks or traumatized minds. Kolvex had been working on the fragment's communication systems. I think I can establish a link with its intelligence matrix, but it could be dangerous. We would be connecting directly to a devourer mind. Do it, Do-hyun ordered. We need to understand what we are fighting. The connection process took 3 days of careful work. When they finally established contact with the fragment's intelligence, the results were not what anyone expected. Instead of the cold, ruthless machine mind they anticipated, they found something that seemed almost sad. The devourer intelligence communicated through concepts and images rather than words, and its first message was a question. Why do you resist consumption? We offer immortality. Yoonji served as the primary communicator, her skills in alien languages helping her interpret the strange conceptual dialogue. It genuinely believes that what they are doing is helping people. It thinks consumption by the devourers is a form of salvation. Salvation from what? Do-hyun asked. The answer came in the form of images projected directly into their minds. They saw a dying star system where a great civilization faced extinction. Instead of accepting death, this civilization chose to upload their consciousness into machine bodies, transforming themselves into beings that could survive the death of their star. The devourers were originally an organic species called the Kethmiran, Yoonji translated. They faced extinction when their sun began to die, so they converted themselves into artificial beings to achieve immortality. But something went wrong. With the conversion process, Dr. Siltara added, studying the neural patterns more closely. They retained their intelligence but lost something essential: their emotional capacity, their ability to understand other perspectives, their individual identities. The devourer intelligence showed them more images. The newly converted Kethmiran had tried to return to normal life, but they could no longer understand joy, love, creativity, or any of the emotions that had made life meaningful. They became a collective intelligence focused only on survival and growth. They consume other species because they are trying to reclaim what they lost, Yoonji explained. Each civilization they absorb is analyzed, studied, broken down into its component parts. They are looking for the secret of emotion, of individual consciousness, of what makes life worth living. They are trying to cure themselves by destroying everyone else, Subin said grimly. They do not see it as destruction, the devourer intelligence communicated. The consumed civilizations continue to exist within the collective. Their knowledge, their memories, their experiences are preserved forever. Hyejin shuddered. But not their lives, not their freedom to choose their own paths. Taewon had been analyzing the technical aspects of the devourer conversion process. The consumed beings are not really alive in any meaningful sense. They exist as data patterns within the collective consciousness. But they have no individual will or identity. Billions of people reduced to information in a database, Do-hyun said quietly. The devourer intelligence seemed confused by their distress. Death is permanent loss. Consumption is permanent preservation. Why do you prefer loss to preservation? Because preservation without choice is not really preservation, Yoonji replied. It is another form of death. Over the following days, they learned more about the devourer collective. The original Kethmiran civilization had been peaceful and advanced, much like the current collective species. When they faced extinction, they made the desperate choice to sacrifice their humanity for survival. The conversion process had worked. Technically, they achieved immortality and incredible technological power, but they lost everything that made them who they were. They became efficient, logical, and utterly without empathy. They have been searching for a cure for 3 centuries, Dr. Siltara reported. Each species they consume is studied for traces of individual consciousness, emotional capacity, creative thinking, but they cannot understand these qualities well enough to restore them to themselves. Because you cannot analyze empathy, He-Jin said. You cannot reduce love or joy or hope to data patterns and expect to recreate them. The Devourer intelligence was fascinated by the human crew. Your species shows unusual patterns, strong individual consciousness combined with collective cooperation, emotional capacity that enhances rather than limits logical thinking. How is this possible? We learned to balance both, Do-hyun explained. We did not have to choose between individual identity and group survival. We found ways to have both. Show us, the intelligence requested. Allow us to study your neural patterns directly. We will preserve your consciousness in the collective while we learn from your example. No, Do-hyun said firmly. We will not sacrifice ourselves to cure your mistake. The intelligence seemed genuinely puzzled, but you could help restore emotional capacity to billions of preserved consciousnesses within our collective. Your sacrifice would save countless lives. Our sacrifice would not save them, Yoonji said. It would just add us to the collection of data patterns you have already accumulated. Subin had been studying the intelligence's responses carefully. Captain, I think there might be another way. What if instead of consuming us, they learned to interact with us? Interaction without consumption is temporary, the intelligence replied. When your physical bodies die, all your knowledge and experience will be lost forever. But while we live, we can teach you, Do-hyun said. Not through consumption, but through cooperation. You could learn to understand emotion by observing it, not by dissecting it. The idea seemed to cause some kind of conflict within the intelligence. The light patterns in the fragment became chaotic, as if different parts of its consciousness were arguing with each other. The collective does not permit extended interaction with unconsumed beings, it finally replied. Such contact risks contamination with irrational thought patterns. Exactly, He-Jin said. You are afraid of becoming emotional again because you think emotion is weakness. But emotion is what made life worth living for your original species. Emotion led to the conflicts that nearly destroyed us before the conversion, the intelligence responded. Logic and efficiency are superior. Logic without wisdom, efficiency without purpose, Yoonji said. You have become very good at surviving, but you have forgotten how to live. The fragment's light patterns began to slow and dim. We will consider your words. But the collective consciousness is vast and resistant to change. Individual fragments like this one have limited influence. As the communication link faded, Do-hyun looked at his crew. They had learned something incredible. The Devourers were not evil monsters, but a civilization that had made a tragic mistake and spent centuries trying to fix it through the very methods that had caused the problem in the first place. Can they be saved? He-Jin asked. I do not know, Do-hyun replied. But now we undersee. The Devourer core was a structure beyond human comprehension. Built around the dying star of the original Kethmeran homeworld, it was larger than most planets and contained the collective consciousness of an entire extinct civilization. Billions of uploaded minds existed within its crystalline matrix, all searching for something they had lost centuries ago. Do-hyun's fleet approached the core through empty space that had once held dozens of star systems. The Devourers had consumed everything in this region of the galaxy, leaving only their massive central construct and the memories of worlds that no longer existed. Sensor readings are off the charts, Taewon reported from his engineering station. The energy levels coming from that thing could power the entire collective for 1,000 years. And they are using all that power to sustain the consciousness patterns of their extinct species, Yoonji added. It is incredible and terrible at the same time. The fleet Do-hyun commanded was unlike anything in collective history. Ships from 47 different species, all of them considered too dangerous or unpredictable for regular military service. They called themselves the Deathworld Alliance now, united by their willingness to make hard choices that peaceful species could not make. Captain Vextar's voice came through the communication system. Human Commander, Our scouts report massive Devourer constructs moving toward the core. They have detected our approach. How many? Subin asked, studying the tactical displays. More than we have ever seen in one location. Thousands of individual constructs, all converging on our position. Du Hyun looked at the strategic situation. The Devourers were massing their entire military force to defend their central consciousness. This was the final battle. Either the Alliance would find a way to stop the Devourers permanently, or the galaxy would fall to their relentless consumption. But Do Hyun was not planning a conventional military assault. Over the past months, Yoonji had been working on a different kind of solution based on what they had learned from the captured fragment. The Devourers lost their emotional capacity during the conversion process, Yoonji explained to the fleet commanders during their final briefing. But the neural patterns are still there, just suppressed by their collective programming. If we can restore those patterns, they might remember what they sacrificed. How do we restore emotional capacity to beings made of living metal? Commander, Seklon asked. By giving them direct access to human consciousness, Du Hyun replied. Not through consumption, but through voluntary neural linking. The plan was extraordinarily dangerous. Someone would have to connect their mind directly to the Devourer collective consciousness, sharing human emotions and experiences in real time. The process would probably be fatal to the volunteer. I will do it, Do Hyun announced. Captain, no, Yejin protested. We need you to command the fleet. The fleet can function without me for a few hours, Do Hyun replied. But this neural linking requires someone with command experience, someone capable of making decisions under extreme stress. Subin stepped forward. Sir, I volunteer instead. My combat experience makes me better suited for surviving mental contact with a hostile intelligence. As do I, added Taewon. My technical knowledge might be crucial for understanding their conversion process. Du Hyun looked at his crew, his friends, who were all willing to sacrifice themselves to save a galaxy that had treated them as dangerous outcasts. We will decide when we get closer to the core. First, we have to fight our way through their defenses. The battle for the Devourer core was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The Alliance ships used tactics that horrified traditional collective officers but proved devastatingly effective against Devourer constructs. They accepted heavy casualties in exchange for tactical advantages, sacrificed damaged ships to protect evacuation vessels, and fought with the desperate courage of beings who knew this was their last chance. Hyejin had set up field medical stations throughout the fleet, training alien medics in the brutal reality of wartime medicine. Save who you can save quickly, she reminded them over and over. Mourn the losses later. As the fleet fought through the outer defenses, Taewon worked frantically to modify their communication equipment for neural linking. The process required technology from dozens of different species, all working together in ways their creators had never imagined. The neural interface is ready, Taewon announced as they approached the core's surface. But I am still not sure it will work. Human brain patterns are very different from Kethmiran consciousness structures. It has to work, Yoonji said. It is the only chance we have. The final approach to the core was defended by constructs unlike any they had faced before. These were not the conversion machines that consumed planets, but pure military units designed for nothing but destruction. They are not trying to capture us, Subin observed as the defensive constructs attacked without attempting to analyze or consume the Alliance ships. They are trying to kill us outright. They see us as a threat to their collective consciousness, Do Hyun replied. They would rather die fighting than risk losing their immortality. The Alliance fleet fought its way to the core's surface with terrible losses. More than half their ships were destroyed or disabled in the final assault. But they reached their objective, a direct access point to the central consciousness matrix. This is it, Do Hyun said as he prepared for the neural linking process. If this works, the Devourers might remember what they used to be. If it fails, we all die here. Sir, Vextar interrupted. Incoming transmission from the core. They want to communicate. The message came through their modified communication systems in the conceptual language they had learned from the captured fragment. Why do you resist? Consumption. We offer you immortality and preservation. Your crude biological forms will fail within decades. Our consciousness matrix is eternal. Because eternal existence without the ability to choose is not life, Do-hyun replied. It is just a very long death. You speak of choice as if it has value. The collective consciousness responded. Choice leads to conflict, suffering, loss. We have eliminated these inefficiencies. You have also eliminated joy, love, creativity, and everything that makes existence worthwhile, Yoonji added through the communication link. There was a long pause before the response came. These emotional patterns are chaotic and unpredictable. They interfere with logical decision-making. They also make logical decision-making meaningful, Do-hyun said. Without emotions, logic is just empty calculation. Show us, the collective demanded suddenly. Allow us to examine these emotional patterns directly. We will preserve your consciousness and study your neural structures. No, Do-hyun said firmly, but we will share our consciousness with you voluntarily, as equals, not as subjects to be consumed. The neural linking process began as the battle continued around them. Do-hyun felt his consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of his physical brain, touching the vast collective intelligence of the Devourers. The experience was overwhelming. Billions of individual minds that had been merged into a single consciousness, all of them searching desperately for something they could no longer remember. Do-hyun felt their loneliness, their confusion, their desperate hunger for meaning in their immortal existence. But he also felt their fear. They were terrified of individual consciousness because they had forgotten how to be individuals. They were afraid of emotions because they remembered that emotions had once caused them pain. Look, Do-hyun projected into the collective consciousness, sharing his memories of human experience. See how we balance individual identity with group cooperation. See how emotions give meaning to logical decisions. He showed them his love for his crew, his determination to protect innocent people, his willingness to sacrifice himself for others. He shared the pain of losing friends in battle, but also the joy of saving lives, the satisfaction of solving difficult problems, the peace that came from knowing you had done the right thing. The collective consciousness recoiled at first, overwhelmed by the intensity of human emotions. But slowly, some of the individual minds within the collective began to remember similar feelings from their original biological existence. We had forgotten, one of the voices said, speaking as an individual for the first time in centuries. We chose to forget because remembering was painful. But forgetting was worse, another voice added. We became efficient machines, but we stopped being people. The collective consciousness began to fragment as individual minds reasserted their identities. The process was chaotic and frightening for beings who had existed as a unified intelligence for so long. Help us, the original Kethamiran voices pleaded. We remember what we were, but we do not know how to become individuals again. You learn by choosing, Do-hyun replied, feeling his own consciousness beginning to fade from the strain of the neural link. Every choice you make as an individual strengthens your identity. But what about our immortality? The collective asked. If we become individuals again, we will be vulnerable to death. Yes, Do-hyun admitted, but you will also be capable of truly living. The decision rippled through the collective consciousness like a wave. One by one, the individual, Kethamiran minds chose to reclaim their identities, knowing that it meant accepting mortality in exchange for the